Can you hear me?
Yeah, very well.
All right, thank
Yeah,
you.
very well.
I think we'll just start in the next 2 minutes.
Okay.
All right, for the sake of time. Ew. All right. For the sake of time, I think we'll just get started. This is 5 minutes past 8. Um, yeah, I think we can just start at once. Hello, everyone. Good evening and long time no see. I think that's a very, very important point. Long time no see. It's great to have you guys on our monthly session for PHP Talks. And I'm really excited to have you guys once again on this call where we discuss different concepts in programming and how you can become a better engineer in the PHP ecosystem. If you are joining us for the first time, or maybe you've just seen our link for the first time and all of that, this is PHP Talks. PHP Talks is a community where we discuss PHP programming language and all its paradigms. We eat Laravel and other frameworks as well, and we discuss everything that makes you a better engineer. So apart from just your usual crud, you actually learn how to what it takes to be an engineer through connection with other like minds and other mentors, and through some of the sessions that we do drop as a result of either a discussion that we've had in the community, or as a result of some kind of survey saying that this is a problem that we could tackle, or something that we just learned newly on our own. And today is not an exception. Today we have Emmanuel Nelson join us. I think earlier last week or last 2 weeks, we had a conversation on the PHP Talks group, and we're discussing we're discussing basically on LLMs, how people use LLMs. I think what started a conversation was Fable. I think Claude released Fable, right? And I can't remember the conversation exactly, but I know that I think Claude released Fable, and there was a hype around Fable, and people were talking about Opus is still okay for their day-to-day task and all of that. And Emmanuel gave us a really good rundown on how he used AIs to actually get him very productive in his work. And today we're going to be talking about building for speed, quality, and change with AI agents with Emmanuel Nelson. Emmanuel, you can say hi. Hello, Emmanuel, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry about that.
Okay, so I guess it's not there. Okay, okay, no problem. So also we have Elisha on the call and Stephen Jude, who are also the co-organizers for PHP Talks Global. If you have any talk that you would love to give in any of our monthly sessions, please do well to reach out to any of us, and we would definitely book a spot for you. And lastly, before we get started on our session, I want to remind you guys about PHP Connect 2026 that's happening October 3rd. Please do well to register. I'll share the link while we're having this conversation, so that you are updated on what we are doing in the PHP Talks community. Thank you very much. Emmanuel, Mr. Emmanuel, you have the floor.
All right, Daniel. Thank you so much, and thank you to everyone for this platform. I really appreciate it. Just give me a minute. I'm going to be up.
Hello, can anyone still hear him?
Yeah, I asked for a minute. Just
Okay, okay, okay.
all right. So I'm going to share my screen and we will start. Okay. So first of all, my my setup might be very different from what you're using. It doesn't really matter. The goal is not to sell you into using any particular AI agent tool or harness, as people would call it. I think the goal is just to show you that these things are universal, right? Can work anywhere. It doesn't matter whether you're using Cloud Code or Codex or any other thing you might happen to find yourself in. Doesn't really matter. So with that in mind, I am going to start. Just give me a second. I want to show. So in trying to get this talk up and going, right? I wanted to build something so that I would use that to demonstrate um, what my workflow, right? So we imagine a situation where we are we are about to have PHP Connect in the next 3 months, and we want to make posts, probably reminders, probably announcement of speakers, and we don't really want a situation where we have to post that on LinkedIn and then post it on Twitter and then post it on Instagram. So let's just say a platform that you write once and then the post goes on everywhere as far as you've connected your account to those platforms. So I did something like that. It works. It's not perfect. Some things are failing, but I don't really care at this point. I just want to see. I want to use it for demonstration. So essentially, what it does is you would have to connect accounts from LinkedIn to Instagram to X. You you try to create a post. You write a post. Select the platforms you want the post to go to. If you are doing Instagram, you have to add images, I think, and then you write the post. Then you can edit it per platform, and it should also format the posts. For example, on Twitter, there is a limit for the amount of characters each post can contain. So if the post is too long, you should break that into threads. So for example, if you check this one I was playing with, you would see that it tried to do that. So this is supposed to be the first thread, and then this will be the continuation in a second thread. And if it was longer, for example, if I should copy this into a second one, then it should it should add extra threads to the post, which it does. The posting is now it's working. Okay, I have to go and delete that. So, how did I get to this? The interesting thing is that I started this work about 6 o'clock. So if you check the time here, this is around 6:43 p.m. today, and I was able to get it up and running in about an hour, less than an hour and a half. So I want to show us how we can get to this point and how we can leverage LLMs to do that. But at the same time, how we can ensure that what we are building is of good quality and it's easily extensible and it doesn't get bad as you build up. Now, this is very important. Okay, before I do that, I'm just going to add a disclaimer that this is not for everybody. So you may wonder that, well, I'm trying to I have a product I want to get up and running. I want customers to test it tomorrow. You don't have to use this kind of workflow. You can just tell your agent, this is what I want, and it delivers the product for you. But if you are in a team or you have an existing product where the code base is substantially large, and you want to be able to manage it. You do not want AI to add slop on top of the existing code base. You want to understand what the application is doing, and you want to know what to change in the future. Then this might get you interested. All right, so this is a post from this is a post that is a response to a comment that the creator of Open Code made in a particular podcast, which I'm going to share the link after this call. So, he said the downside of not having a clean code base is that it is worse than ever, right? So, the founder at Open Code, I'm not sure what his full name is, but for brevity, I can't pronounce this interestingly. So he said that of recent, right, he has realized the importance of AI agents and how the how your workflow essentially plays into compounding, either compounding slop or compounding extensibility into your code base. So an agent performance is a function of its intelligence, which is the built-in training data that agent came in, and your instruction and the context, which is the code base. So three of them are very important. How you tell it to do the work is very important. The capability of the agent is also important. And then most importantly, the content of your code base is very important. So you have to be mindful of all three of them. That means you should care beyond the design at this point. And caring beyond the design doesn't mean you need to craft extensive prompts, doesn't mean you need to build 400 or 500 lines of agents.md or Claude.md if you are using Claude. It doesn't mean that. It just means you need to clarify responsibilities. You need to set meaningful boundaries. You need to nudge the agent to create simple interfaces, and you need to have your workflow to be very predictable. Okay. Now, what I usually do, and I think this is the part that got people interested when I sent my messages in the course of a conversation about 3 weeks ago. I want a situation where I tell the agent what to do. And when I come back to review the code, I do not want a lot of back and forth. I want to be sure that the agent did what it did. It was able to look at what it did by itself, autocorrect itself, and then if it keeps on finding issue, it should keep on autocorrecting itself till it's okay. And then come back and tell me, here is the result. And I look at it and I make comments or reviews if I want. Or sometimes I even go and write the code by myself because sometimes it's very funny. It doesn't just do it right. So, but I want those I do not want to interfere with it as much as possible. I don't want to do a lot of back and forth, especially if you find yourself in a constraint where you have to use a cheap model, then you are going to get into this loop. So how do we get ourselves out of that? Is where I did what I do. I have what I call a specialist agent. Now, agents, you can think of agents as, let's use this my session as an example. Okay, let's use my session as an example. Usually with most coding harnesses, there are usually two agents built in by default, or two modes built in by default. There is a mode where you plan, and then there's a mode where you build. So these things are essentially agents, and agents at its core, they are simply instructions on how the model should behave with your system. The system in this case being your code base. So it means you can add as many agents as you want. Some harnesses, some workflows come with their own custom agents, and they simply help you and make your life easier. But if you are not so much into crazy workflows, you don't want to change harness every market day, then you can just use what you have and define a custom agent that extends your functionality. So what I used to do before was that I had the custom agent here. I think it was called Project Orchestrator, but I removed it. The reason why I did that is I realized that having an agent comes with a drawback, or should I say a disadvantage, which is that you are going to override the intention of the people that have built the harness. So if you're using Cloud Code or you're using Open Code, you're using Cursor, and you have a custom agent, you are going to overwrite the instructions that the people that made that harness crafted in trying to steer the harness to behave. So I don't really want that. I just want to use the plan and build mode that comes with it. So what I did is when defining agent, for example, in open code, or I guess any other harness, you can make an agent a primary agent or a sub agent. Primary agent is what you see here. Sub agents, you can call them. Maybe if you have a task and you want to explicitly call the agent, you can say maybe Laravel code reviewer. I'm not sure. It's not coming up. But you can call a custom agent. I think it's called reviewer. I may have. Anyway, let's find it. So I have it. That's not supposed to be so. Not sure what's going on. But I have custom agent created, right? And I'm going to show you how it works. I'm not sure why I cannot call it in this session. So in implementing this my code, right? I gave it the instructions of what to do. This thing is broken. I gave the instruction of what to do. And when it was able to complete that task, it called a sub agent, which is called Laravel Code Reviewer. And that sub agent went ahead to review the code by itself. I did not do this manually. And then it gave a response. And then the response was iterated over. Just give me a minute, please. Let me restart this thing. I'm not sure why it's misbehaving. Just a minute. Okay, I'm going to try again. All right, this thing is broken and it should not be broken. I'm not sure. Um, okay, so this is sub agent view. Hopefully the agent list should be up now. Yes, it is. All right. So what I do here is I have a custom agent. As I mentioned before, it's just a set of instructions. You could create this via CLI, but I prefer this UI, which is a browser UI I use. It's built on top of open code, and it's called Open Chamber. So I essentially tell the agent that okay. So I essentially tell the agentic workflow that this is a sub-agent that is to be used to perform rigorous adversarial review of Laravel code and filament code for framework correctness and security. So that's the description. This gets loaded whenever I start a new session. So when the model is done with its session, it recognizes this, recognizes that I'm running a Laravel application, and then calls the sub-agent by itself. I could make it primarily, like I mentioned. I could make it available as primary or sub agent, but now it's just a sub agent, right? And then there is a custom instruction here, which I could share later. But essentially, these are things that I would check if I were reviewing someone's Laravel code. So the agent does that, right? And then this was the very first, let's find the very first call of it. Okay. This was the very first call. It asked it to review the code, and then it did a scan of the project, and then gave it a feedback, very long feedback. And then the main agent went back, looked at the feedback, and then did some implementation. And then it called it once more, told it that I've done some implementations, check it out again. And then the agent went back, did some review. It did not find any high or critical uh, feedback this time around. So I don't think it will go back and do a second review. No, it did not. So that is essentially the crux of it. Now, the reason why I do this is because okay, I already mentioned that before. I do not want to go back. I when I'm reviewing the code, I want to do as little back and forth as possible. So you can have as many custom agents, sub agents as you want. Probably one per stack. So in my own case, I showed one I have for Laravel. You could have one for Node.js. You could have one for Python, and then you could specify the opinions you want that agent to have when it's reviewing the code for those stack. Okay. So now moving forward is agents. They are very enthusiastic. They always want to do work. That is AI, and they would do any work, but they may not always be correct based on your product requirements. So what I do is I have a product requirements file on my repository. Sometimes I create it by myself. And as a matter of fact, that is why this particular task took me a very short time to do, because I already had the product requirements defined ahead of time. I think I can show you. So it should be products. I'm so sorry. This thing is really misbehaving. So it should be products.md, which I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can open my VS Code and show you what that is. Just a second while I do that. All right, so we are back here. Inside my PRD directory, I have two files. I have products.md, which essentially is a very long markdown file, and it took me some time to write it out. But it contains everything I probably would ever require for this product. If the product is changing, I'll probably change this, or maybe add a new one inside here. The purpose of this is whenever the AI is trying to make change, or whenever I ask it to make a change, it should not focus only on the technical implementation, but it should understand the product itself. It should understand the business itself, and then it should make its changes based off that. So, for example, maybe you have a financial product and you tell it, oh, by the way, I want to add tax calculation to other checkouts. It could, go to the internet, find how tax is calculated from products and add it to you, add it for you, right? And then you have to go back and tell it, no, in my own country, right, the tax, there's a normal tax, then there's a VAT. VAT is probably 7.5%. The tax is varies based on the volume of product the person is buying. You could do that 1,000 times based on in every session you want to make a change to that particular module, or you could just have it once here and then you leave it at that. Now, modern models are smart enough to look at your files, discover that you have a product requirement there, and then scope the context of its changes based on that. So that is something else that is very important to have. Okay. Now, you might have noticed that I had a design.md here. Um, for front-end or full-stack applications, right, the system design is a very important part of the agent context. If you don't do it this way, then any change you're going to make, the agent is going to try to make local UI modifications. So probably it's going to try to create inline CSS, or the card on a particular page is going to be inconsistent with the card from the other particular page. Now, as developers, we may not know the best, you may not know the best UI decisions to make. So, which is why I added here that you should get a clean UI design system from a UI designer. Or there are for simple projects, right? For example, if I'm working on a project with myself, there are sites or products you could use to scope out a design system for yourself, probably even do a full-blown UI and then work from there. One of them is Moonchild, which I recommend that you check out and use that if you need to. Okay, I don't work for them, by the way, so I'm not marketing anybody. Now, the goal is to plan longer and build faster. And that is the real strength in AI agents. Agents can spit code um, faster than it takes you to review even one file. So your goal is that once you tell the agent implement, you can go do whatever you want to do. If you have a family, if you have a child, go and play with your child. If you have a book to read, you go and read that. If you want to eat, go and make your breakfast. Come back and the agent is done and you review. That is the goal. You don't have to spend 5 hours going back and forth with the agent. So I'm going to show you what I do that helps me to reach that particular goal. Now, I use a skill by Matt Pockott. I hope I called that correctly. And it's a skill that contains box of skills, right? So I think the most important one to me is grow with docs. And then essentially what that does is you tell the agent in a session what you want to implement. And then it's going to ask you a bunch of questions until it believes that you have given it all the scope and context it requires to implement. And then once you are done, right, you cannot tell it, okay, now turn this our conversation to a specification that I can give to any model. Or even if you want to share with a teammate, you can share that specification with the teammate. If you want to keep it for future reference, you can do that. Now, once that is done, you can then go ahead to implement. Having specification is very important because when you are working with light models, by light models, I mean Flash models, for example, maybe Gemini Flash or DeepSeek Flash, it's going to cut corners and it's going to skip some things you wanted it to do. So having that spec on file is like, okay, you tell the agent, once you are done, go back and validate your output against the specification. And if anything is missing, go back and do it by yourself until everything is feature complete based on the spec. It's very important that you have that. Okay, this one is self-explanatory, use enough reasoning. Now, if I had done this task with, let's say, the defaults, by the way, you notice I'm using Luna here, and that is on purpose. On purpose because I want to demonstrate that anything you can do with Fable or Opus or even Soul, if you are using GPT family of models, you can do it with their, maybe not their lowest tier models. I don't think you can do this with Haiku, but on GPT, right, you can do this with Luna, which is like their lowest tier. So I used this guy on purpose, and I've been using it for, I think, the past week, just experimenting to see the output. So if I had worked this guy on default or maybe even medium, it would have given me, I would be angry with the outputs. So what I do is I usually use high or X high. I could use max, but it's very slow. So I don't do that. I use max only when the task is very complex and I want the agent to give me its best performance. So that is something else that you should keep in mind. All right, so another fun thing I want to show you is hooks. I've talked about instructions, I've talked about skills, I've talked about guides and specifications, but agents are very indeterministic. You can run it today, it works. Tomorrow it doesn't. Maybe because Claude decided to tweak something on their own end, or the agent does not just like you today. It refuses to work. So there's something I failed to mention anyway, is that of course we are on Laravel now. So there is Laravel Boosts, which comes with guidelines and rules on how Laravel application should be written. There is also Sparty guidelines, which I use, which essentially it tells the agent when you are writing a class, this is how you should format the class. You should not, you should give the code some breathing space. You should do validation rule this way. Um, Essentially, the things that if you use Sparty's package, the pattern that they write their code, I also love to use that package in my project as well, but it doesn't always work. So I use hooks. Now, hooks is available for all kind of agent harnesses, whether it's Cloud Code that you are working with, or whether it is Codex, or whether it is open code. And I'm going to show you an example of a hook that I did here. So I think I called it PHP guard. There are two of them. Okay. So essentially what I do here is whenever there is a tool call is essentially, think of the agents as, think of the model. Let's go back to the model harness. So you see what we have here. We have read files, we have shell command, we have a point where it starts to write a file, for example here. So those are two calls. Two calls are simply the agent harness trying to get your computer to do something. It could be it trying to get your computer to write a file. It could be it trying to make an internet call to search something on maybe GitHub. It could be it trying to run a bash command. So I open code exposes what we call tools dot before execution. So before execution, right? If I am trying to edit or I'm trying to write a file, then I want to run a custom script that essentially looks at the content the AI agent is proposing to write. And then if that content doesn't match what I'm expecting, then I'm going to throw an error. So essentially all this thing, what it does here is what it does here is it's if you are trying to write a file, right, it gets the content of the file. What I do here is I write a temporary PHP file because I don't want to overwrite the file on disk, but I want to pass that PHP file to a pacer and then compare it with my rule set and ensure that it validates and is working properly. And then once it has done that, it now passes that file to a custom validator file, which I have. Essentially, this is going to be a PHP file is going to run at the end of the day. So this is a command. It runs PHP. It passes the temporary file. There's a project root here, and then it passes the path to the temporary file as to the proposed file as well. Sorry, the file is supposed to it wants to write into disk, and then of course, if the exit code is 0, that is if I throw an exception in the PHP script, maybe because the proposed file doesn't match what I expect, then it should format the error properly and then tell the agent that this proposed write was rejected. And this is the reason why it was rejected. So you have to write the file again. You have to format the file again based on the error that the file that came from the script. So there are a couple of things I'm doing here. Let's see if I can quickly explain them. Sorry, this is spaghetti. This is vibe coded. I just checked that it worked. I did not really care about the implementation here because it's throwaway, right? So excuse the way it looks. But there are a couple of things that I do, right? So I run pins because sometimes if you are using DeepSeek and people are not running it in the max mode, it's going to skip a lot of things. Probably will not run the test. Probably will not run pint to format the file. So I ensure that that is run. And then if there's an error, I don't think if there can't be an error. Okay, if there's an error, then I tell you that there was some style errors, and then the agent has to rewrite the file to meet Pint's convention. Okay, so there are, I mentioned Sparty skill package before. So essentially, I converted those skills, those guidelines into like deterministic code. And I'm telling the agents, I'm telling open code, before you save any file, you must ensure that what that file matches the guidelines that's specified. Of course, I can edit that file I can edit that skill on my code base as well, just to match my tests. Then there are other things I do. I scan doc blocks, for example. I don't want this, but inside my own personal code. So I ensure that it's not there, because agents would want to add that as well. I ensure that classes are imported, and it's not using fully qualified names. For example, I'm just gonna skip that one. Okay, so there's also another one for constant declaration. So I have a particular format for how my constant should be declared. It should be Pascal case, should not be all uppercase with underscores. For example, there are Laravel conventions I have. For example, for validation rules, for naming route names, for controllers, for um, okay, I think this one is mostly for routes, I think, but there are other ones I have here. I'm not going to go into them in details. Okay, there is also for validating route path. There is something else that agents do which annoy me, which I'm going to show you. Give me a second. Okay, so this line number, for example, there are like two things I want to point out. For example, if you're using GPT Soul, I think it has a problem whereby there is just one method. There's a method with like a single line of code, and it's going to create a method for just that thing and then call it over and over again, or maybe just call it in one place. So I think this one, I had a rule that says if a particular method that you have has just one or two statements of line and it's used in just one particular place, then don't do that. Have it inlined inside the place that is calling that statement. There is one thing that agent does, which I'm going to show you here. I can't find it. Some agents, in fact, all agents from my observation, when they are creating PHP literals, what they do sometimes is they put this inside a simple string interpolation. I I have a very deep hatred for this thing. I don't like seeing it at all. So I also have a rule that says if a proposed file is trying to write a string, and then the string only contains the string contains a variable, and the variable is a simple variable like this, and it's trying to save this to file, then I don't want to see that anywhere in my code. So simple things like this ensures that by the time I go back and by the time I go back to the agent, right? Let's say I go back to the changes and I'm trying to review what the agent did, right? So I try to, for example, open up this field. I'm trying to review what the agent did. I'm not going to see things that annoy me. I'm not going to tell the agent, oh no, this is not how you do it. Go back and do it the other way. And I'm not also going to say, well, it doesn't matter. I'm going to push it to production. So I just leave it like that. So this ensures as much as possible that the code stays the way I would want it to stay. Okay. So at the end of the day, right, I know we talked about speed, but speed necessarily isn't about getting the code up and running within 1 hour. Speed compounds. And one thing you would discover from what I've shown you so far is that speed comes by expertise. So expertise is the real multiplier here. Now, in summary here, I just said that engineers who get 10x results from AI are not relying on secret prompts or elaborate tricks, right? They understand the software, they know the outcome they want, and they can recognize when the result is flaky. The agent compresses the time between a clear engineering decision and a working implementation. So I'm sorry, some of the things I wanted to show, they are not working. This harness is disappointing me today. I'm not sure why. But essentially it's simple as that. It's not complex as you might have imagined. It's straightforward, and I hope that you learned a thing or two. And I'm open to answering any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Amazing, amazing work. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That was a lovely session. I picked a few things. I think I'll probably even make tweets about it. So thank you so much, Mr. Emmanuel Nelson. That's very good stuff. Please, if you have any questions, I saw someone raise his hand earlier. If you have any questions right now, this would be the best time to do that. Okay, Mr. Steven. Okay, Mr. Steven, 1. Mr. Paul, 2. Mr. Goodluck, 3. Okay. Mr. Steven, you can go ahead.
Okay,
Olga.
yeah. Thanks so much, Nelson. That was a powerful. I think I've learned a lot today than in all my AI coding session I've learned over time. So my question is on that your PHP style guide. I kind of like what you did there. So my question is, how did you come about that? How did you get to build that into that level of, like, I see a lot of rules there. Like, what's the progression from the time when you started putting it together to now, and how are you managing it?
Okay. So first of all, I have a base, right? Because I believe that there are smarter people out there than I am who have done this thing time and time again, and they have recognized patterns, and luckily enough for us in the Laravel world, right, people are very open to sharing knowledge. So one of them I use is Party. I mentioned it before. They have a guideline, and it has always been there before AI. So what they just did right now is, here is a guideline in plain English. Now here is a skill that you can add to your agent that converts this guideline to what an agent can pass and try to stick to. So I use that as my base. Now obviously there are some things they do that I do not like. For example, I think they say if you have a route name in Laravel, then it should be camel case. I don't like camel case in as much as I can, except for variable names. So I changed that, in my, and what I usually do is that these guidelines are local to my code. So they are not global. So every project has its own skill, which I put in from Sparty, which I can go and edit to suit that project need. So that's how I do it essentially.
Yeah, so just a follow-up, right, before I drop the mic.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are working in a system where the code base is not yours, you
Yeah.
could use AI, but you can't decide what comes into the code base, especially in terms of the AI agents you're using. How do you go about
Mm-hmm.
this? Like, what do you advise the person to do?
Okay, so let me try to share my screen once more. Just a minute. Okay, so if I go, you would notice that some of these files are, let me open my Git ignore. Okay, some of these files are ignored from Git. So anybody looking at from the outside world, looking at whatever I push to GitHub, they don't see what's going on. So for example, my agent, the custom agent I talked about, is Git ignored. You won't see it. Anyway, this one is global, so it lives inside my global user folder. But assuming I had a specific agent I wanted to work for just this code base, I'm going to git ignore it. If I had like the documentation I mentioned, the specs, you're not going to see it. If I have some skills, I think you would probably put that inside /skill / the skill name / the skill description. You're not going to see it. I'm not Git ignoring open code on this particular code base, but for the ones that I work with people, I do not publish it, right? So you won't see this open code repository folder, which essentially is what contains the the custom hook that I created. I hope that answers your question, Jude.
Yeah, it does. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for the session.
Welcome.
All right, thank you. The next person, Paul Ben. Mr. Paul Ben. You can go ahead.
Yeah, good evening. Mr. Emmanuel, thank you. I think that's been a very informative session. And then Mr. Daniel, thank you for setting this up. If you notice, I think I had raised up my hand earlier. Now, I think we're looking at building with agents for speed. So, and yeah, we all use the agents these days and all that, but and everybody might have a different kind of setup. So it was I think at the initial stage I was a little bit interested in seeing how your setup looks like. You understand?
Okay.
Yeah, because considering the cost that goes into subscription for agents, I was hoping that a kind of like a basic setup with open code with some of these available agents would
Okay.
have been displayed, because that will really help a lot of people. I use open code and I have a basic setup. So I was hoping
Okay.
to see something in that line, you understand? Then, of course, that will now translate into the skills and all those other things which we all use. So I was kind of
Okay.
hoping that I could get that. So because that will kind of like that's usually the starting point. If you have people who want to use agents and they don't get, or they don't have the base setup, and you start talking about skills and hooks and all that, there's kind of like a disconnect for some of them. So that's why I was asking. Or
Right.
rather,
So my setup is very simple. I don't every time I open Twitter, I see hype, which of course the hype are that sometimes they are not overhyped, right? They actually have basis and ground for them, but sometimes they are. So I try not to follow them. I think for me, my setup is like a browser. If you notice, I use Firefox. I've been using it since I started developing for like 6 years or more. I've not changed it. No matter what people say, oh, today I discovered Arc. It has horizontal tab. You should try it. I'm like, okay, how is it different from what I'm using? What advantage does it offer me that I haven't gained with Firefox? If there's none, then I stick to what I have. So this is open code. I like using the web version because let me show you just why I like using the web version. I could say in post.php, I could say, you know what? I don't want fillable anymore. Use guarded. And then I add that as a comment, as you would do on a GitHub pull review, pull request review. And then at the end of the day, I just hit enter here, and it would work on the exact place I pointed it out to do. I think that's why I don't like using the terminal. There is an app for it as well. I don't like installing things on my laptop, so I just use the one that comes. Create a saver, I run it on my browser, I'm done. If I want to check, I think DeepSeek has a new harness that they released quite recently, which is gaining popularity. If I want to check that out, I install it, I run the web, check it out. If I like it, I stick with it. If I don't, I uninstall it. But this particular UI I'm using is not the open code web UI. There is a plugin called Open Chamber, which actually has a lot on top of it. So I think it gives you ability to work from mobile as well. It gives you a desktop app. It's on steroids, but I'm never going to use a mobile one. If I'm on my phone, I want to rest, so I don't want to coach. But you get the point. Now, for the models itself, I currently, for my own personal use, right, I use GPT models most of the time. The reason why I do that is GPT they have good models and they allow you to use it anyway with your subscription. Claude doesn't do that. If you subscribe for Claude, you must use it on Claude Code or Claude Desktop. You can't use it on Open Code. If you want to use it on Open Code, you must use the API and you must pay per token. So I use GPT subscription. I also have an Open Code subscription, which works very well for me. As this particular model I'm using now is from Open Code and it's Luna. So I think for now they have a promo where they give it to you at half the price. So that's my setup. If I'm working for, I mean, depending on the company I'm working for the company, they may offer different models, and I'm going to use that. But these are what I use for my own personal development. I hope that answers the question, Peter.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right.
Okay. Thank you. I think we have just two more hands. I think those would be the last two. Mr. Goodluck, your answer. You're next. Mr. Goodluck. Then after Mr. Goodluck would be Mr. Olushola. Yeah.
Okay, good evening, Stephen. Good evening, everyone on the call. And I so much appreciate this session so far, Mr. Emmanuel. I'm always open to new things whenever it comes to developing with AI and agentic coding. So this your session was a great eye opener to me from the things I've seen you do on your system. At first, seeing for 3,000, I was like, wow, this is a great setup. So I like OpenChamber. I've seen what they do on the repo so far. And I'm just particularly concerned about, once it comes to AI, the subscription, the cost, how you manage the budget and everything around it. So I guess that's like another part you have to pick up from to answer on
Mhm.
um from the last person you answered the question. Then my two questions, I think on your presentation slide, you were talking about UI on how to specify
Mhm.
your design.ng. So
Yeah.
I don't quite know how you also handle stuff like MCP. If you want to like call, let's say, I think that ChatGPT actually started to calling. If you want to like get design elements or like visualize UI from
Mhm.
Figma 5, if you are developing for the
Mhm.
front end side. So I
Mhm.
do have a setup that I use then. So I don't know how you actually manage such a situation. That's my first question. Then secondly,
Okay.
my second question is the context of this your setup so far. At some point when you have all these ambiguous setups, so when you are now developing or doing so many other things, the AI starts forgetting some things because of the context window of what it
Right.
remembers or what it's trying to keep track of. So I don't know if you have experienced that and how you manage it.
Okay. So let me start from the second one. Um, I try to, so if I'm doing if I have a particular task to do, which is a very elaborate, very big feature, I try to use one session for it instead of trying to spawn multiple sessions. And the reason is that the agent has context on what I want to do and the reason why I want to do that. So it saves me from re-expanding myself multiple times. Um, when what I typically do is, maybe I think there are ways to automate this probably, but I look at the context window. I monitor it very closely. When it gets to about 60/70%, I do a compaction. So I can manually initialize a compact. And essentially what that's going to do is it's going to summarize everything I've done in this session and then reset the context window to almost 0%. So the AI is then going to hallucinate less. That's what I do to help in that regard. All right, so you can see that. And then you can see we are still back to 21% for some very weird reason, which we should not be. All right, so we are back to 13. Okay, so you can see that the context window has reduced now, so to 13%. So I can still keep on iterating until I watch out for when it's up to like 37, 70, 80%, and I reset it. So number two, unfortunately, I do not do much front-end work. So I really cannot answer your question. Um, maybe I think it's time for you to also share your own setup with us. So what you did in the past, you can share it with us. We'll give you feedback, and then we work from there. But then something that your question reminded me of, which I probably missed out, is there is this nice to have MCP server. I think it's called Greg. And what it does, and I think we all should look at it, is what it does is if you ask it to implement something and maybe you're not sure of how to go about it, you're not sure of the architectural design, essentially you can use it to go to GitHub, find similar implementation from popular repository, and then tell you, oh, by the way, this is how this guy implemented this thing. And I think we should do it like this. And then you can explore, can even go and look at that repository in details and then gain some insight from that. So Greg NCP.
What's the name of the package again? Sorry, so that we can get a link.
It's an MCP server. Greg. That should be mcp.greg.app. Okay.
All right, cool. Thank you very much. I think the last person, Mr. Olushola, your question.
All right, thank you. Nice presentation, Mr. Emmanuel. And okay, before I continue, please, can I ask this question? This grep thing, I thought it's a tool in all of this LLM, Mr. Emmanuel.
I'm not sure it is, but as far as open code it is, it doesn't come. Okay, grep.
Yeah.
Grep is, yeah, it's an inbuilt tool for searching file. But this one is, instead of searching the file on your local system, it does it on GitHub. So it goes through various repositories, finds patterns of implementation that is close to what you want to do, and then use that as context.
Okay. That makes sense. But okay, let me just go to my question. I have two questions basically, and I don't know how the first one, I don't know how to present it well, but maybe I'll start with the second one, and maybe by the time you explain that, I will ask the first question. So the second question is, I am a lazy programmer. I'm sorry for putting it out. You understand? And all of these things look like, okay, don't let me put my opinion outside. The question I'm going to ask is, like, at what point does every of these things become over engineering or over AI prompting or AI, whatever you want to call it? Because when you were presenting, you were talking about, specialized agents for each and every of these, should I say, languages, for example, Go, Node.js, Python, name them. So does that mean that for every programming language, you have to have sub agents? Because to me, and I really appreciate the fact that you mentioned hooks, because that one is deterministic. Why all of these, how would I call it, agents.md or claude.md, they are probabilistic. So the question is, at what point does it become? Because to me, I will not lie, all of this, I have to write all this hook, be reading. I don't have that time. I use the data memory, and I use, project specific, how will I call it, MD files. For example, agent.md. I specify all the things I want there. If it is lowercase, I want all through in my naming convention, it should be there and it should be enforced. And then I created some skills to ensure that, all of these things are enforced. So why should I have to build sub agents for each and all of this code when we have for example, we have, I use Claude and ChatGPT most of the time. I'm not so familiar with open code and all of that. So maybe my question might be a little bit biased. So because I know that they have all of these inbuilt, should I call them commands, like review, whenever I'm doing, and I like this skill that you have presented, grill me, I use it too, which are very, very easy for me to use. Like I have a project, ask me a question about it. After, asking a series of this question, it generates a PRD file, and then we start implementation. And when everything is done, I have a skills that check everything. So, and I think that works for me, and seeing your own point of view too. So I'm like, I'm trying to find a balance between both. So that is my question, if that makes sense, at least for now.
Okay, so like you're not lazy. Let me start by saying that you're not lazy because
You
because you went out and you found those skills and you put them on your project, or maybe someone on your team did that for you. So at least someone in the pipeline is not lazy. Um. So the way I look at it is this: one is someone is maintaining one for you, which is the one you've just talked about, the skills um and the commands that comes inbuilt in Cloud. Someone maintains that for you. On the other hand, if you want flexibility, you can do it by yourself. So it's not an either or case. It's like you have two options before you. The one you like most, you pick it. Now, the reason why I do it this way is I don't if I tell an AI agent do something, the output I want, I don't want back and forth. I don't want to I don't want to think did this agent do what I told it to do properly or not. I just wanted that I look at the changes, I understand what it did. I verify that it's okay with the business requirements. If it's doing too much or it's getting too annoying, I go and write the code by myself, and then I make a pull request, and I call it a day. I don't want to. Okay, maybe aside from using the grill me with docs thing, I don't want to, after specifying the product requirement documentation, I tell it, okay, slash implement, done, slash review, done. I don't want to do all that. So I'd rather have it automate itself for me. That's the difference.
Yeah, I mean, we could create like a skill for that, can't we?
You
And
can create this. You can
yeah,
create a skill for it. Now, the reason why I am using a custom agent as opposed to a skill is depending on your pocket at a particular time, right? You may be fortunate enough to be using Fable, Opus 5, so at all the times. Those ones are a bit more intelligent, so they spend much time to understand that there's a skill in the context window, so I should apply that skill. If you are not, if you find yourself using maybe, let's say DeepSeek, Flash, or Pro, it may not obey those cues, may just ignore it and do whatever it wants. So you now see that having a customized agent, it cannot skip that one. It can't skip that. So I think the difference is if you're trying to save cost, then this might be a bit more useful.
I get your point because, for example, let's say I have 10 projects to do, and
Yeah.
across this 10 projects, I have different, how will I call it? Just think of these things like abstraction, the way, and I get your point about cost, but I have a different opinion on that, but that is not the question. Like, I have like 10 different projects, and out of these 10, let's say like I have 5 different programming language on all of these things. And according to you, what we should do is build sub agents, based on these different projects. At some point, you are going to be, let me use the right word.
You're going to be tired.
Sorry, not tired. It's like repeating code, like repeating prompts, like, oh, this same thing I'm doing in project A, I have to do it in project B because this thing is not skills. And if it is skills, it is persistent all through your, let me say,
So
system.
so it is not. It's not okay. Let me backtrack.
Okay, please.
Let's go to agents. Now you can see PHP Starch, you can see custom agent. This custom agent is global.
I see.
It's not tied to this project. However, the hooks I showed was tied to that project because I wanted to be able to show you inside VS Code. If I want it to be a global hook, I can do that. So whichever project the agent is running, it's always going to run that hook. Make sense?
Yes, it does. It does now. I didn't know it was
Okay.
global. I'm coming from Claude perspective because when we say agents or sub-agents, it's usually in that session. You
No, it
understand?
doesn't have to be in that session as well. If you're using Claude and you're installing a skill into Claude Code,
Mm-hmm.
it would Okay, let me not say what I do not know. But if
No,
you are installing a skill from skill.sh, for example,
sessions
yeah, it will ask you, do you want to make it global or do you
global.
want to make it tied to this project? And you can choose to make it global.
True. But agent is what I was confused about at first. So, but this point that you said is now global makes sense then. So thank you very
Yeah,
much.
yeah, you're welcome.
But you've not answered the question of the over engineering point. At what point does it becomes over engineering, at least to you, in your opinion?
The point it becomes of engineering to me is I think when I'm focusing more on steering the agent to do the right thing instead of doing my main work, it becomes over engineering. So if I spend like literally this thing took me, let's say, from maybe around like 3 p.m. to, let's say, like 6 p.m. 2 hours. So if I spend 2 hours to set up a project and I'm done, like for the rest of my work on that project, I don't have to do any other thing again. Would you say it's over engineering as far as the agent does the correct thing multiple times? I wouldn't say so. But if every time I'm making a change, I have to do back and forth. After planning, the agent implements, I go back and check. I don't like it. I tell you, do it again. Um, then when you compare to the initial 2 hours I spent, I don't think I over-engineered in the space of those 2 hours.
But what if I spend 2 hours for just an index HTML page?
Yeah, and then I added a disclaimer, right? That this is not for your hobby project. It's not for
Okay.
prototypes. So it must pay you off.
All right. Thank you. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Hello, I see you. Okay. Thank you very much. We've gone past our usual PHP Talks time. I mean, this is a very interesting session, and I really love it, but we have to go really soon. Thank you very much, Mr. Emmanuel. This was a lovely session. Very, very interesting. A couple of things learned here, and I guess that everyone would pick one or two things to actually use in their own workflows and all of that. So yeah, thank you so much. Once again, I shared the link to PHP Connect. So if you've not registered for PHP Connect 2026, please do what to register. It's actually online this year, so you can stream from the comfort of your home. The only thing is for this year, it's just this year that's not going to be online, right? There's big news coming. That's all I can say for now for PHP Connect 2026. There's big news coming. Please be on the lookout. And the reason why we want you guys to register is so that you guys can be updated as much as possible. While we are still updating the community, there are certain things that we do share via emails to keep you updated. You know, last year we had native PHP. I mean, give us $1 million worth of license. So imagine what we could get this year if you are already staying up to date with us. For PHP Talks itself, please do want to share the community links with any of your friends, developer friends who is interested in actually discussing developer things. And if you want to also discuss something or have a session where you want to speak about something that you feel like we've not talked about, our DM is very much open. Me, Steven, Elisha, our DMs are very much open for you to have that conversation, and we'll definitely look for a time for you. Thank you very much for joining tonight's session. Do have a great week ahead. I hope your Monday is favorable. Have a great night. Bye, everyone. Yes. Oh, one more thing. Yes, the session is recorded. We'll have a review, and we'll definitely once we are done with the review and we're able to get things out of the way, we'll definitely release it. Thank you very much. Bye.